So the last topic for the day, right? Um, I know you did mention this during one of our conversations at AU, or other conversations we've had before. Lasers, right? You've delved into it a little bit. I'm not going to speak a lot about it because I'm going to let you have the floor and kind of guide us through, laser scanning.
What is laser scanning?
Yeah, laser scanning. It's no, I'm not going to say it because any coworker that hears this will say you always mention that, Robert. I mean, laser scanning is. Have you ever seen a laser? What do we call them? A laser disto or a laser distance measure. Yeah, it's kind of like that, but way better. Where it will take 2 million measurements a second and record them spatial 3D in a 3D space.
Is it on a tripod or is this like? Is it on a tripod or is it like one of those drone things that you use these days?
It depends on which kind you have. We use what's called wow, I just forgot the word. I should know this word. Terrestrial scanner. So terrestrial is on a tripod, stationary. They do have handheld SLAM units. I don't remember exactly what SLAM stands for, but essentially you walk around and it scans while you're moving. And then of course drones, which use a similar technology to SLAM. I believe it might actually be the same exact technology. But no, we use terrestrial. They're the most accurate scanner. They are the least efficient scanner as well. So it comes with, it for the accuracy, it takes longer. I mean, with a SLAM scanner, you can just walk through a building. You have to walk kind of slow, but you walk through. Whereas with ours, you move the tripod, you do a scan. You move the tripod, you do a scan. So,
okay. What dictates where you put those tripods? So I've never used one of those. Yeah.
Laser scanning is line of sight, and it's not. There's no X-ray capabilities, so it's going to be based on what you need to capture. You need to have coverage over what you're capturing. So, if you're trying to capture like beams up in the ceiling, you have to be scanning in specific locations to capture both sides, for instance. The other thing that would dictate where you scan is that they have to be within a certain range of each other so they can figure out where they are in relationship to each other. So if you scan on one side of the building and then you go 1,000 feet over there and scan, those two scans are going to be separate because they're never going to be able to register to each other. Registration is when two scans, you basically line up two scans to each other. So, on a lot of our projects, we'll scan roughly 20 feet on center max for a good registration. And then when we hit certain areas where we have fine details, we have to work our way around tanks or equipment, we might be scanning closer together.
Has anyone ever returned back to the office and thought, I missed out a grey area, I need to now go back again? Is that possible? Can you go back and then it all stitches together?
You can go back. We the way we got into scanning was we've been receiving scans from third party companies a lot for quite a few years, and many times that would be the problem where we get a scan that looks pretty, but then you start looking at it closer and registration would be really bad. You'd see like this column would be like 4 columns all kind of on top of each other, but not necessarily lined up.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of effort to go back to that company and get them to fix it. So we decided to invest in a scanner ourselves because we felt like we had learned enough to be able to figure out all the problems that were going on with them and that we had
did the job yourself, basically.
Mistakes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so when we started doing it, we kind of had a really good idea of how to plan so that we wouldn't miss things we needed as much as possible. So, I mean, I went probably way overboard on here's a plan. Here's a plan. Here's all the dots. I put the dots where you need to scan. Don't not scan on the dots. Scan on the dots. And as we got more and more, used to the process, then the people who are going out and doing it, they just know now. We just say, here's the area, figure it out. But anyways, that's the idea. With our new scanner, we actually just picked up a new scanner a year ago that has a tablet, and as they scan, they see the registration as they go, so they can actually make sure on site that they actually captured what they needed. So there's no more heartburn until they get back and you're like, guess what? You're going right back out there again. But yes, you can still tie together a scan from one date with a scan from another, as long as you scan in the same relative positions so they can tie together. It's all about that overlap of data so that they can tie together.
And the reason for this laser scanning kind of technique coming out instead of doing things manually, how much time would you say that this has really saved people in the design process?
I mean, a lot. It's hard to quantify it, to put a number to it, but I mean, it's definitely on an average project, we might have to go out on site, to take measurements 3 to 4 times, or call the contractor or owner and have them go out and waste their time multiple times. Usually with a scan, it's a one and done. We're out there once, it might be for a day, it might be for 2 days. And then we're done. We have everything. And it's not just the stuff that we need, it's the stuff that we didn't know that we needed, or things that we might have forgotten were even around our design. Again, like these are used primarily in retrofit and existing condition designs, not brand new greenfield designs. But yeah, it's on the savings of time for capturing data, it's huge. It's also the amount of money saved. A simple change order could be like $50,000 easily with some of the equipment that maybe a piece of equipment doesn't fit, now you got to order something different. The cost of the scans are so small compared to that. So, I mean, it saves a lot of time too in the construction phase. If you have everything fits and you're not going to have those issues with ordering new equipment and then dealing with lead times. I'd say like of all the clients that we've heard give actual like feedback to us, that's usually they're like, oh, I'll never not do one. In fact, I'd say 75 to 80% of the clients who've done one end up doing them on like every project afterwards. So it's really, if we can get them to do it once, it's usually we're going to have repeat business on that.
Yeah.
So,
because I can attest to that as well. As a young engineer, I used to go on site. My discipline's MEP, so I used to go on site for those existing conditions and retrofits, to note down everything on a drawing and also to take photographs. And like Robert was saying, you come back and you realize, because, it's probably your first or second time in the rodeo, as they say, you probably missed something because there's so much stuff. And there's some mechanical rooms that are so, complicated that I'm pretty sure you're going to miss something. But the first time I used a point cloud or a laser scan in the model, it had everything, like Robert said, that I wanted, but also didn't know I wanted. So that was perfect. And I didn't have to go on site for that. Someone else was able to go on site. They did the scan, send it over to us, and then we got it into Revit, and we were able to just use that to create our retrofit. So that, that was a complete game changer. I agree with.
Yeah, it's probably the coolest scan. I ended up doing this. I don't normally go out and do scans, but with our new scanner, we did a test run with a rental before we bought ours. And the gentleman named Jared McCabe, you might meet him at some point, maybe at the next Audis University. He helps me run the laser scanning. And we basically went out and scanned a ski jump in Michigan. It's the world's tallest ski jump. Try taking a $100,000 laser scanner up 400 feet on a ski jump. It was very interesting and kind of scary. But what was cool about it is the ski jump, it hasn't been operational. It's there as kind of a tourist attraction, but they want to reopen it for Olympic activity. So we basically scanned the entire jump and then all the underside of it. And their goal was to see if the slope of the jump would be accurate to the landing of the jump. And it's really important that trajectory that you come off the jump could be life or death. You're supposed to stay 6 feet above the ground the whole way down. If you end up going 20 feet up, bad things are going to happen. So we took a scan, and then they provided us, here's what the actual trajectory is supposed to be. And we overlaid it, and it was way off. It was like 4 feet off at one end. Which is what they needed to know so we could then make structural changes to the jump and make it safe. So, I mean, that's try measuring a 400-foot tall, super kind of a big radius like that. How do you measure that and make sure it's accurate? I don't even know. I mean, I'm sure you can. I'm sure there's some really smart old school guys who know how to use a measure tape better than I do. But I just
They
can't,
do. They
I
need to
can't
get in
fathom it.
contact.
Right.
I'd love to know. There's always, yeah.
rule of thumb, right?
I'm amazed when I remember learning hand drafting and learning how to find the center of a circle, and it blew my mind because I'm like, that's just SC in AutoCAD, snap center, boom, I know where the center of the circle is. Why do I have to figure this out with hand drafting?
Yeah, you bring back old memories now, Robert. With I've done also hand drafting and the French curves and using all of that. So it's an interesting trade, when you learn it. But then once you see the automation side of it, or you see the CAD side of it, you realize, okay, that was fun, but I'll stick to that.
Gives you a greater appreciation for technology once you know how hard it was to
Absolutely.
do some of those simple things that are so easy for us now.
Do you think we're getting lazier though? Because that's like a lot of skills that's dying out.
I don't know.
We're relying on the software.
I've spent
And
more.
knowing how it's done.
Yeah, so we've had to do an assembly drawing for a centrifugal pump, and we had to do it on paper. It took us about 8 to 10 hours to do it. Pretty sure you could get it done in half an hour or less now on using the software. So, yeah.
I'd say that, I don't see anybody like in my company doing things faster and then just not working for the rest of the day. So I don't think that anybody's, now that doesn't mean that other people aren't outside of my company, but I think most people are just like, thank God that's done. Now I have all this other just pile of stuff to do. So who has time to be lazy?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it's a dying skill. It's, back in the day, people used to remember people's telephones off the top of their heads and things like that, and know the times tables like off the top of their heads without having to just pull out your mobile phone and go to calculator or something. Whereas now we're relying way too much on that technology. If that phone is no longer next to you, you don't have that technology, you don't have your app. Before we started this podcast today, we was looking at, downloading an app, all of us, and on our mobile phones and things like that. And it was just like in 2 seconds, yay, we've got it and we've got access to what we want. But, back in the day, we would have just kind of looked for the textbook and looked for something and just kind of go through the pages and find it or use that part of our brain. That part of our brain that we're no longer using in that way, what's happening to it, That's a topic for another day. But I think it's really cool to kind of end the podcast on that laser scanning and the technology and how we can utilize it to kind of better where we are within our work. And what a way to kind of listen about the ski jump. I mean, I could just imagine you kind of flying down the ski jump with $100,000 worth of equipment. I'm thinking that's not how they done it. But anyway, that's the imagination.
That would have been an accident if that happened.
Yeah, especially after what you said about the structure.
Talking about textbooks, actually, reading books, I know a lot of people like using Kindles, but I'm still old school. I still prefer a nice physical book that I can sit down, read, look at the letters, feel the pages. I know we want to try to avoid the paper and, be sustainable and then use a Kindle or an iPad to read. But, growing up using textbooks and books, I just think it's one of those things you feel nostalgic. I don't know what you guys prefer. Robert and Batul, what do you guys prefer using? Digital media or physical?
It really depends on what I would be reading. So, for example, if I'm reading a book that I know I need to refer back to, I'd rather have it on paper. But if I'm reading something like an article, a newspaper or something, I'd rather do it on a phone or an iPad because there's no point for that kind of quick recycle paper. That's the route that I've taken. So I've kind of done a 50-50.
I think if it's for entertainment purposes and I'm actually reading, I like a physical book. Hey, and it can be made out of recycled materials, so I mean it's not that bad. Although I will say that I've really started to appreciate books on tape. I I just recently had a 21-hour drive over the course of a day and a half, and I had finished Game of Thrones years ago, the whole book series, but I started listening to it again on the way, and oh man, it's just so nice to be able to read when you can't read,
Right.
So
Interesting. And that's how technology has played a part in all three of our lives, which is brilliant. And it's a great way to end our podcast today. So you've been listening to Optimize et al. With myself, Batul Jabor, with my colleague, Pratik Chitnis, and our great client, Robert Deardorff. Any final comments that you would like to, or thoughts that you would like to leave our audience with today?
I don't know. I mean, never stop being curious about new things. I mean, you never know when that next Google page of searching for a solution doesn't lead you across something that could make your day so much better. I don't remember how many pages I went back to find Cloud Manager, but it wasn't the first thing I found. I had to dig, and then I found it, and it's like, actually, you know what? It was talking to somebody. I remember clearly being in a meeting that I wasn't even supposed to be in, and somebody was doing something, and I said, "How did you do that?" And they said, "Oh, it was Cloud Manager." So maybe even don't be a hermit. Talk to people, because you never know when you might just find that lucky sentence that somebody mentioned something. You're just like, oh my God, where's this been all my life?
And I think you mentioned that to us. You're like, well, where was this all my life? I needed this.
What a way to end the show. Where has this tool been all my life? Speak to people. Brilliant. Thank you all very much for listening, and see you all in the next podcast. Bye-bye from me.
Bye-bye.